أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآل محمد الأئمة والمهديين وسلم تسليما. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today we're going to speak about an incredible topic, and it's actually a topic that was spoken about by many of the prophets and the messengers, and that is the topic of karma. Karma, that which Buddha alayhi salam, Krishna alayhi salam, and the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam warned about. And we know that these religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, and the religion of Islam, they all spoke about reincarnation. And they all spoke about the concept of karma. But nobody explained it in such great detail as Muhammad and the family of Muhammad alayhim salam. So almost all religions teach that there are consequences for your actions. As we spoke about in the last lecture, about the non-working scholars, that there are consequences for their actions too. Almost all religions taught or teach that you should also treat others as you would like to be treated. Kama tudin tudan. Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam teach that actions have direct consequences on future incarnations or lives. They're tied together. Imam Ahmad al-Hasan alayhi salam said regarding karma that it is the ultimate proof of God's existence. That's how important it is. The ultimate proof. He said, alayhi salam, minhu salam, if you go into the hearts of atheists, you will see it. And if you go to the heart of the jungles and approach humans who had never ever heard of any religion, you shall see that they too worship something that they consider to be the creator. In the end, everyone reaches one point, and that is they understand that there is a hidden power which is controlling and ruling this world. And the proof is getting judged by the same. Karma. As you judge, you shall be judged. Do you understand, son? So across religions and prophetic teachings, there exists a single governing principle. Every action returns to its doer. This is the law that governs reincarnation and causes that which you are in to be. And so if you want to know why are you in this current condition, all you got to do is, if you look at what your current condition is, you'll understand what you did in your past life. And if you look at your deeds in this present incarnation, you will also understand where it is that you're going to or what condition you will be in. Across religions, we have narrations that essentially say the same thing. In the New Testament, we have Jesus alayhi salam saying, "Do unto others what you would have them do unto you." And this kind of reinforces our previous statements that this governing principle is that the actions that we put out will always come back to us. Hence, Jesus is saying, only do that which you are comfortable receiving, because that which you put out will come back to you. He's recognizing this governing principle. The Torah says, love your neighbor as yourself. Same meaning, different words. You have also the Prophet Muhammad saying, none of you will truly believe until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. Again, the same statement said differently. In Hinduism, we have this statement, do not do to others what would cause pain if done to you. the exact same thing. How and why are all these people across all these religions, these different cultures, different parts of the earth saying the exact same thing if they didn't recognize one single truth? In Buddhism, it said, treat not others in ways that you yourself would find hurtful. Again, the same thing. Confucianism, what you do not want done to yourself, do not do to others. It's crazy, isn't it? Taoism, regard your neighbor's gain as your gain, and your neighbor's loss as your loss. The exact same principle once again. And here we have in the Bhagavad Gita these images and these teachings being on display. This idea that human beings cultivate this sort of consciousness, a consciousness that resembles animals or that would resemble an enlightened being. If your consciousness is that like an animal's consciousness, well then that is what you shall become or what you shall be carried over into. Those who behave like pigs, right, will eventually reincarnate as pigs. Those who behave like tigers will eventually reincarnate as tigers. And we have this image here. It's actually a picture from the book itself. It says, animal killers do not know that in the future, the animal will have a body that is suitable to kill them. That is the law of nature. So the same idea that that which you put out inevitably will come back to haunt you or will be done unto you. And so they are emphasizing, all these prophets and messengers are emphasizing that there's this key that we have to understand. If you want to walk through life safely, then you have to abide by this principle. All right. So now we're going to look at another conversation between Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam and al-Mufaddal ibn Umar, in which he sheds light on this idea and this idea of karma. And know, O Mufaddal, that your Lord has wills and manifestations which he brings forth amongst his creation. He reveals them at times and conceals them at other times. When he reveals, it is as a recompense or a payment for what he concealed. And when he conceals, it is as a recompense for what he revealed. Likewise, when he appears to the lower world in human form, so whenever you see the statement lower world or dark world, we're talking about this physical, material, earthly realm. So it's saying that whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appears in the lower world, this physical world in human form through manifestation, and he appears through them, once again through the concept of tajalli, bringing them into being through himself. This is a very important sentence here, because basically what it's saying is that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not manifest into creation, there would be no creation. All of creation is given rise by his presence or manifestation within creation. And that's why you have narrations that state that if the Imam was to be absent, creation would collapse unto itself. So he literally enters into creation, gives rise to them all, and then what does he do? He calls them into being through himself, but they deny their transformation into mesukhiyah. They deny and they become mesh. That is a payment for them for deeds that preceded before. And thus, O Mufaddal, they are paid by maskh. And from that, if he makes the luminous world manifest by his appearance with them in human form, it is a recompense for deeds that proceeded in the luminous realm. Deeds by which they became deserving of that manifestation. This is very important because basically what he's saying here in simple terms is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala manifests in creation, sometimes he causes heavenly beings, angels, spiritual beings, people that are above to manifest with him on earth too. And whenever he does so, the reason for it is due to karma. Even those angels that come down, it's due to karma, due to deeds that they had performed before in the luminous realm. It is because of that they come down. So there's already from the outstart a karmic system at play. When he hides something, he reveals. When he reveals, he pays back through hiding, etc. When he brings people into manifestation, when he puts them into maskh, it's all because of karma. It's all because of deeds that came before. Likewise, he says, when he appears to the inverted world, the worldly realm, among the people of denial and disbelief, when God manifests to them, when he appears to them, when he brings them into being through his essence, when he shows them himself and calls them to acknowledge him and submit to his veil and his gate, his door. Then from them there occurs what had already occurred before: denial, refusal to obey his veil and his gate, rejection and disbelief in him and in his gate. So it's a cycle. It's repeating itself once again. They already had this test. He's bringing them into manifestation, and he's giving them rise in a new form by his essence, and then he's calling them towards himself. So there's this idea of a cycle that's replaying, that's repeating. God gives rise to creation. He calls themselves to him. Some recognize, some do not. He collapses it. And then it repeats itself again. And it's always about that, about God making humanity recognize him. So but these people that disbelieve, they advance into mesucheia. Then each one of them who had existed at a previous time becomes a carrier of the one he had carried before. The one who is killed becomes killed by the one he killed. The one who is owned becomes the owner of the one who owned him, until the ridden mounts the rider. So every time God sends these disbelievers into maskh, he starts making them repay each other back for whatever it is that they did to each other. So you have a bunch of disbelievers. Disbeliever A kills disbeliever B. They both deny the Imam. They both deny God. He sends them into maskh, and the one that was killed kills the one that killed him. And then that way the justice plays out. Karmic debt is paid. It's nullified. The one who is owned becomes the owner, etc. And this continues amongst them. It continues to play out like that. Each one taking their karmic debt from the other. From the elephant all the way to the lion. From the camel to the serpent. From the scorpion to the worm. Creatures that devour one another. Why is it that they're eating one another? Karma. Why is it that they're riding one another? Karma. Why is it that they're doing harm to one another? Karma. Each action that occurs is not by coincidence. Everything is for a reason. Everything is happening because of karma, like for like and thing for thing. If the inverted world, this backwards world is basically what it says in Arabic, this backwards world, because they're a world of mainly disbelievers. If this inverted world understood what you are hearing now, if they truly recognized this speech of mine, they would pity themselves, and they would realize that the caution that a human takes against beasts birds, and creeping things, all forms of maskh is in reality caution for his own self. The kindness that he shows to them, he's actually showing to his own self, and the harm that he inflicts upon them is harm that he's inflicting upon his own self. So some of these monks in these various religions and sects and traditions, they're really extreme. They're extreme to the point that they don't even want to, they're very careful to not even swat at a bug or kill an insect or step unnecessarily over a plant. And the reason for it is what Imam Sadiq alayhi salam is saying here, that people should be cautious in the way that they're treating other animals, because every single action you will reap what it is that you sow. The owner becomes the owned. Even be careful in the beasts that you own, the animals that you own. Be careful. Because the owner will become owned. And the owned becomes owner, just like in this picture here. The free becomes enslaved, and the enslaved becomes free. If you have birds in a cage, be careful, because you also might be that bird in the future. All of this is recompense and mutual repayment from one to another. It's terrifying, isn't it? It's going to get a lot more terrifying, by the way. It's going to get extremely terrifying and scary. I want you guys all to pay attention tonight so that, inshallah, you walk out of here as a different human being. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, and know, O Mufaddal, that the beings of Masukhiyah reclaim their effects and their rights when they come into being, when they are returned to humanity, and when they return again to Masukhiyah. Each type is returned into a form of its own kind according to the category that it has become deserving of, whether through naskh, faskh, raskh, maskh, or waskh. Okay? Now remember, we said naskh is the transformation of. So basically what it's saying is what? Is that every person that ends up going into one of these states, he retains the same attributes, the same characteristics, and the same karma. He carries it over with him, whether through any of these forms. We said naskh is transforming into a human, right? Reincarnating into a human. Faskh is reincarnating into a plant or a tree. Raskh is reincarnating into a metal or a stone. Maskh is into animals. And wasakh, we said it has two meanings. One of them is the insects, and the other is these kind of like substances like petroleum or whatever else comes out of the earth. If iron, this is the extent of karmic debt. If iron once was cut with iron in a certain time, then that which was cut will return in another time and era until it cuts the one that cut it. Every doer becomes one to whom something is done, and each is returned to the place where he was the maker, so that he becomes the one made. The nail becomes the hammer becomes the nail. It's inescapable. You have to be careful, even when dealing with inanimate objects. Every type is returned into the form that belongs to its own kind. And I bring to mind also, comes to mind the story of Moses in Judaism, how he got in trouble because he struck a stone out of anger. Remember? Yes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ended up being very upset with him and forbidding him from going into the promised land because of that. And likewise, the stone is cut by the iron. So the iron is returned to the stone, and that stone is returned to the iron until it cuts it. Example for example, and that by that. And whatever there was of lead or copper or silver or gold, it is returned to that state in which it is done upon it what it has done, until it completes and each takes from each. And I increase you, O Mufaddal, with an explanation clear that's still not with you, O Mufaddal. Indeed, there is not of anything from these kinds that passes upon one from the dark world while he is in humanity, except that it passed upon him in the maskh and the raskh and the like of it, because for it is a time and a duration. Do you know what that means? It basically means that everybody that you meet while you're in a state of being a human being, if you go into maskh, you're going to meet those same creatures, those same characters in one way, shape, or form. They're going to be the stones around you. They're going to be the animals around you. They're going to be something around you. You and all your people, you're going to meet them again. He returns all that from humanity to the maskh, and from the maskh to the raskh, and from the raskh to humanity once again. So the one acted upon takes the state from the one who did unto it. Example for example. So whatever was a human and cut with iron stones, like bullets, whoever was cut by these little iron stones or bullets, then the stones become iron, and the human stones, and the iron a human. So the cut one cuts the cutter, and the iron becomes stones, and it cuts the cutter. The bullets become human beings at some point, and they're shooting the person who was the bullet for initially shooting them to begin with. Do you understand? And likewise, the ornament even becomes human, okay? And he adorns himself with the human who adorned himself with it, because he returns the human to the raskh and the raskh to humanity, example for example, until each one takes from the other what it took from him. Meaning what? If you're wearing a gold necklace, you are taking something from this gold. You got to pay it back. Okay? You have to pay it back. So just as you wore it, it has to wear you too. That's the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So look at the ranks of the dark world and their incarnations in humanity. There is one to whom a great station has been made, and hardly one of them adorns himself with much ornament. And indeed, if he wished that there be upon him from whatever he desired, it would be. And from them are those that take them as plates and cups for eating and drinking, and this all occurs as it occurred to them. Your cups, your plates, they used to be at some point human beings that perhaps ate from you, and so now you are eating from them, okay? And this thing here, this is an important paragraph, and he's basically stating that sometimes, here's a proof for you. He says, sometimes there are people who are raised to a great station. They become really rich, for example. They have a lot of money. They could wear whatever gold and silver they wanted to, whatever jewels they want to, but instead they do not. And indeed you, O Mufaddal, surely find also in the inverted world here, one who does not own except a single dirham, an extremely poor person, and yet this poor person is the opposite of the rich person that chose not to wear any jewelry before. This poor person, even though he has a single dirham and he's in dire need of food, he withholds from himself that dirham and he instead turns it into a ring. and he wears it as a ring, and that is so that he may take in full what is his upon that ring. The reason why the poor person is forced, he just finds in his self this inclination to not spin that dirham. He wants to turn it into a ring. He feels he must do it, is because this is a karmic debt which is being played out. He is forced to wear the person that previously wore him. The rich person, if he doesn't have any karmic debt, he's not going to wear, even if he has all the money in the world. You get it? And indeed among them is one who does not leave off adorning himself with silver and gold and copper, and lead and iron and glass. And among them is one who hangs upon his neck, or upon his arm, or upon his waist, beads and stones, and other than that, from the kinds of raskh. So he is according to the measure of what was his. All that is so that he may take in full what is his upon that. And he has adorned himself by them, just as he adorned himself with them first while he was in the state of humanity. Okay? So it's exactly likeness for likeness. That is precisely the reason why people are wearing jewelry. And likewise, the horses and the camels and the donkeys and the cattle and the dogs and the kinds of beasts and the fish and the birds, even in the snakes and the creeping creatures and the rest of the meschh beings, from them is that which is adorned and is traded in its adornment with silver and copper and lead. And all of this runs upon them just as they cause to run upon those ornaments in their compositions, example for example. All right? So the gold is now serving as jewelry for the cow, because previously the jewelry might have been a cow that was wearing, right? Okay, you get the idea. All right. Have you not seen a fish exceedingly large that was caught and placed in its ear, an earring or a bead? They used to do this back in the day. They used to take these little fish and put jewelry on them. So that is found much, so that all that runs upon them according to what they took from that in the state of their compositions, example for example, justice from your Lord and equity in truth. So every single thing that's happening, everything that you see, everything that you're wearing, everything that everybody else is wearing, it all happens for a reason, and it all happens within this divine karmic system. Look at Mufaddal ibn Umar. He looks terrified right now. And Mufaddal said, so my heart trembled at that. He said, and my master knew what was in myself. And so Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam said, O Mufaddal, indeed there has become confused in yourself something you wish to ask me about the wearing of these ornaments and their using them. And the thing that you want to ask me about is that basically these believers, they use these jewelry too. You're terrified. You're terrified because you see believers wearing the jewelry, and now you're putting it into the context of that which I explained to you. So how is the condition of the believers in that, and how do they become free from it? You guys look terrified too, huh? All right. Al-Mufaddal said, I said, O my master, you are the knower of what is in myself, of my secret and my open, and you are more knowing of it than I am, as you described yourself. So I said, and we know what is whispered by his self, and we are nearer to him than the vein of the neck. Now, I want to stop here for a moment before we just kind of like quickly pass by these verses, because these words, because it's very important here. I want you guys to examine the level of consciousness that Al-Mufaddal ibn Umar is on. Al-Mufaddal ibn Umar, in this conversation, he's telling Imam as-Sadiq, you know me better than I know my own self. You know what's in me, just as you described yourself. And then he quotes a verse from the Quran. Al-Mufaddal ibn Umar is recognizing at this very moment that the knowledge that is coming forth and the words that are coming forth from Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam are not merely mortal words. This is God that is using Imam as-Sadiq as a veil that Al-Mufaddal ibn Umar is conversing with. He's recognizing a station. He's recognizing a station of the veil. Al-Mufaddal ibn Umar is a door. He's a bab. Imam as-Sadiq is a veil. He's the name of God, or maybe he's even the meaning of God, but he's a manifestation of God that he's conversing with. So our master, minhu salam, said, O Mufaddal, indeed the believers do not enter into anything of that, nor does anything of that run upon them. All of that for the believers is lawful and unrestricted in the two worlds, the higher and the lower. Have you not heard his saying in the Quran? Say, who has forbidden the adornment of God, which he brought forth for his servants, and the good things of provision? Say, they are for those who believe in the life of this world. They believe while in the life of this world exclusively on the day of resurrection. So he's saying that this whole cycle of debt that has to do with raskh and has to do with the metals and has to do with one substance paying back another substance, this is not applicable to the believers. It's halal for them, okay? Now, I want to point out a few things real quick before we move on. This is not applicable to the people who are believers temporarily. And we have people like that. They believe temporarily, and then they disbelieve. Once you fall into disbelief, this idea is null and void, and all karmic debt falls onto you. Now, why is this the case? Is it just because believers are special, or what's the logic behind it? Let's examine here. And that, O Mufaddal, is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to the believer. Okay, what did God give the believer? Let's look. He gave the believer possession over the wealth of the disbeliever and his self and his family and his child and his spirit, his soul. And by him, by the believer, the disbeliever lives. And were it not for the believer, the disbeliever would not live, nor taste the flavor of the world and the life, nor breathe the air, nor enjoy a condition from the conditions. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. You remember the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the words of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, "Man kuntu mawla fahaza aliyun mawla," right? And the idea that we have that you and your wealth and your health and your wife and your children and everything belongs to the Imam. Your Mawla has authority, ownership over you and everything that you are, right? And you also have these Arabic sayings and hadiths which basically indicate that you and all that you have are the possession of your father, right? Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He takes the believers and puts them under the authority of the Imam. The Imam owns them, and then the Imam gave all of the disbelievers to the believers and all of their property to the believers. And only by the believers do the deniers attain what they attain. by their beautiful actions with the believers. So look, in God's book, this text is basically saying that in God's eyes, in God's law, in God's book, if you don't recognize God, if you don't recognize the Imam of the time, you don't have any rights. You aslan should be nothing. You should be a stone. You should be in a state of non-existence. But the mere fact that disbelievers exist, why do they exist? They exist because of karma with the believers. They exist and they attain whatever they attain by beautiful actions with the believers and by their doing of good towards them. And by their actions towards the believer, they also perish by what they did towards them from evils. And so they attain by their actions the entering into humanity and the enjoyment in it. So an animal might have tasted really good or might have been a really loyal companion of a believer or might have saved the life of a child of a believer. And because of that good deed, he comes into humanity. Okay? And he enjoys in it. Then they become in maskh. So they don't come into humanity if they save or do good towards a disbeliever. Only those who do good towards or serve. Maybe it was even the metal on your sword or the clothes on your back. It served you well, and for that reason it might come and be a human being until they are paid back for what they commit in the state of humanity that they're in. And most of them fall back again. All right? So that it does with the believers other than those actions, and wishes that it could enter upon the believers from joy, that which would count as repentance for the disbeliever who would harm them, and that by that joy it would be raised to a station of glory and authority and grace in humanity, and also in maskh if he was to go into it. So basically, animals or other objects that end up elevating and becoming human being, once they deny and they go into a state of maskh again, they're like, woe to me, I wish I could come back, I wish I could just bring joy to some of the believers, because they recognize while in a state of maskh that they were only enjoying humanity due to the preference of the believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, so mufaddal. And by the believers and by their horrible action with them, they perish. And there comes upon them what came in humanity and in the maskh. And it is uncovered for the maskh beings that their deeds with the believers brought that upon them. So the animals, while they're in maskh, they know why they're in maskh. They know that the reason for it was not just being a tyrant, but being a tyrant specifically to XYZ believer. So they, with that, they could be returned to humanity so they could increase their good actions. So they wish that they could be returned to humanity so they could increase their good actions towards the believers. But when they are returned to humanity, they increase in ugly actions with the believers. So while they're in a state of being an animal, they remember and they regret. And they want to come back, and they want to lick the feet of the believers. But then when they come back as human beings and get a second chance, they forget once again, and their true ugly nature comes out. So that action returns them once again to a state of maskh all over again, and also in other states like wasakh and also like raskh. Because every time they are returned to humanity, they forget the unification and oneness of their master, and they transgress against his preferred ones. They forget that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, la ilaha illa huwa, is, and true monotheism is in recognizing his manifestation and his presence within that one human being. And obeying anybody besides that one human being is shirk. They forget that, and they end up being enemies to the ones who do believe in the Imam of the time, and by that they earn a return once again into maskh. That's what it's saying. And this believer, if he possesses the disbeliever in humanity and in the maskh and in the raskh, he is not demanded therein with giving, nor upon him with recompense to his preferred ones. So he reverses him to the naskh and the maskh and the waskh and the raskh. What is this saying? And by the way, we've tried to do like a very almost literal translation of the text. So sometimes it's a little bit difficult to understand, but I'm explaining it to you here. Basically, what the Imam is saying, he's saying that if a believer possessed an animal, or he possessed gold, or he possessed another creature in another form, and he normally, if he wasn't a believer, would owe that creature debt. So the creature is serving him, but not because of a karmic debt, all right? The believer does not owe him anything. There's no debt ever that is accumulated on a believer towards another creature that is in one of these states, because the believer does not owe the non-believer anything. The non-believer is in existence out of love of the believer, in the same way that all of existence is in existence out of love for Muhammad and the family of Muhammad alayhim salam. So what happens? What happens if he has a debt? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reverses it, and he makes this creature go into various states, and he is punished even further by the hands of the believers. As he subhanahu wa ta'ala said, God will punish them by your hands and heal the breasts of a believing people. So know this explanation, O Mufaddal, and make it clear and understand it and comprehend it. For I have led you upon the path of your Lord, and I made obligatory upon you therein the binding of yourself and your family, and the use of everything I've explained to you, and commanded you, and made known to you, and that you explain it to those below you, and if he is from its people, and that you command them to use its understanding, and there is not completed for you, nor for your family, the unification of your Lord, except by establishing that, and accepting it, and establishing its conditions, and acting by it, and by its conditions, and affirming it. So basically, you're not going to be a true believer unless you affirm and believe in this knowledge, and you act by it, conscious of it, just like the hadith that says, nobody is from us except that they believe in the raja. So the Ahlul Bayt made belief in the raja as a stipulation for faith in the Imam of the time. The same thing is applicable here. All right, now we're going to get into some pretty heavy, dark stuff, and I think in it is a lot of lessons for all of you, actually. So hold on tight, those of you who are married, who have wives, who have children, pay attention. And know, O Mufaddal, that your master has caused to run matters in humanity, and brought them into being, and carried them through, and measured them, and made them binding, so they run upon their way and their ranks. Nothing is by coincidence. Things are happening in humanity, and it's all happening for a reason. And that is that you might see in the dark world one who marries and gives in marriage daughters and sisters and mothers. And likewise you find them in the maskh. And that is that you see the man marrying off his mother to a man and his sister to a man, and another marries off his mother and his sister and his daughter to another. And likewise you see them, the man possesses in the maskh beings livestock, and other than them from the beasts and the birds and the rest of the kinds of metamorphosed the maskh beings, from the riding beasts and the donkeys and the camels and the cattle and the sheep, and other than them from the dogs and the rest of kind of maskh. And he arranges some of them over some in the reaching of their act by their resemblance. And there comes to be from them what comes to be carried out in humanity from procreation and mutual joining and reproduction. What this is saying basically is that the individuals that own or have a mother or have a sister or have daughters, and he marries them off, this act will often repeat itself if these individuals go into maskh. And you might have in another life that same man repeating that act, or the roles becoming reversed, okay? And they are being given off or paired off or breeded with other beings, and so the cycle mimics itself when it crosses over. And it also might be the case that a man who marries a woman, if they go both into maskh, they get to continue that beautiful love story in the maskh, and they get to be married over there too. It's a beautiful thing. See? And likewise, the world reproduces from the Arab women and the Kurds and the non-Arabs and the Romans and the Armenians and the Nabateans and the rest of the kinds of Africans also. And marriage occurs amongst them in the like of that. The slave marries the free woman, and the non-Arab, the Arab woman, and the Jew and the Christian, they marry. A Jew might marry a Christian woman who claims nobility, and he marries a woman not equal to him in lineage and origin. And likewise, the man marries the woman who is not equal in rank nor lineage. Just as it runs upon them in humanity, it will also run upon them in maskh. And every possessor of a right is returned his right, and everyone upon whom is something from what is upon him is brought out. This is extremely heavy, and it's really disturbing, actually, if you pay attention and you think about it, okay? So this is one of the reasons why I really hate divorce, actually, and I really hate problems in marriages because of the following. What Imam Sadiq alayhi salam is saying is that whenever people enter into a marriage contract, boom, all of a sudden it starts, a record book is opened, where they start to build up karmic debt against one another. And their relationship never ends in humanity or in maskh until they pay that debt off. So if Michelle is married to On, or Rida Zainab is married to Mahmoud, or Dr. Yasmin is married to Sajid, it's going to be Sajid, and then 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 Sajid, forever, for a very long time, until things are fixed between them and the karmic debt is eliminated, okay? If a person who is noble, high standard, rich, poor person marries them, eating off of the riches of the rich person, karmic debt is in place. The rich person, okay, is owed by the poor person. Poor person owes rich person, etc. Now, how it plays out is fascinating and very disturbing. And likewise, Mufaddal, the low woman marries the Christian. And likewise, the noble Arabian mare mounts the low pack horse, and the Arabian stallion mounts the pack animal. And the donkey mounts the horse, and that is that the horse was a donkey and the donkey was a horse. And likewise, it runs upon them in humanity. The Muslim marries the Christian woman in one incarnation. Then the Christian woman returns in a second incarnation to the mounting. The woman becomes the man and the man becomes the woman. The roles are reversed and the marriage continues until the oppression that was done by one of them to the other plays out. And this is the law of Abraham. This was part of Abraham's law that was hidden. The man returns to femininity, and that is in the religion also of Christianity. So the man marries her and takes from her what was his when he was a her and she was a his. All right, everybody look at their spouse and imagine what you would look like as the other gender. Mahmoud carries Rida. Rida carries Mahmoud. And it's interesting to note, because it said that this was in the religion of Christianity, it's interesting to note that in the Gospel of Thomas and other sources, there are actually quotes that speak about gender exchanges, okay? Here we see one of them. It says, Jesus saw infants being suckled. He said to his disciples, those little ones being suckled are like those who enter the kingdom. They said to him, then will we enter the kingdom as little ones? Jesus said to them, when you make the two into one, and when you make the inside like the outside, and the outside like the inside, and the above like the below, that is, to make the male and the female into a single one, so that the male will not be male and the female will not be female. And when you make eyes instead of an eye, and a hand instead of a hand, and a foot instead of a foot, an image instead of an image, then you will enter into the kingdom. When you play out the different roles of one another. Simon Peter said to them, let Mary go away from us, for women are not worthy of life. And Jesus said, look, I will draw her in so as to make her male, so that she too may become a living male spirit similar to you. But I say to you, every woman who makes herself male will enter the kingdom of heaven. And know, O Mufaddal, that likewise it runs upon her in Maskh. So she is in one manifestation a horse, and the donkey mounts her. And she becomes in a second manifestation a female donkey, and the donkey returns to a horse and mounts her. And there does not occur for them a joining in one manifestation in humanity, nor in the Maskh. Just as it is not possible for a Christian to marry a Muslim woman, and likewise it's not possible for a stallion to leap upon a she-donkey, rather the Muslims marry the Christian women, and the donkeys mount the horses, and it is the establishing of the justice of your master in the inverted creation by what they deserved and then acquired. It's very precise, and it all has to abide by the law. The law states that it's not permissible for a Christian man to mount or marry a Muslim woman. Okay? But it is permissible for a Muslim man to marry a Christian woman. And so in a scenario where they're married to one another, a Muslim man and a Christian woman, and there's injustices that occurred and they have to come back and play it out again, what will happen is that the Christian woman now plays the role of the Muslim man, and the Muslim man plays the role of the Christian woman. But it will never be a scenario that it is, the Christian man and a Muslim woman. And I will increase you, O Mufaddal, in that knowledge. It is not with you, nor did you know it, nor did anyone before you know it. Indeed, the Jews who are in humanity, and those upon whom this name has been fixed, they don't give their women to the Muslims, nor to the Christians. They have the same type of law. And likewise, they do not marry Muslim women nor Christian women because it is with them forbidden. They are not able to it. And likewise, their affair runs in the Maskh. So if you're a Jew, if you're a bad Jew, not all Jews, bad Jew, and like some bad Muslims go into Maskh. If you're a bad Jew and you go into Maskh, then those laws, those rules that you are abiding by as a Jewish man or Jewish woman will play out the same. You will abide by these laws too in Maskh. And how would that take place? By them being, for example, mules. because they do not come to, they are not mounted, nor do they mount anything else. And they are in their state alone in that which they are, just as they were in humanity. And perhaps there is from them something by way of force. You might find a donkey being raped, okay, by force, but it's abnormal. It's something that they usually don't do. Donkeys stay to donkeys. So he's saying, immaskh, the creatures that are in maskh, that stay to its own kind, are maskh of human beings that used to also stay to their own kind. And perhaps there is from them something by way of force. If you did see a horse raping a donkey or a donkey raping a horse, then it would have been due to fornication that it fornicated in humanity. So then there would be a mule mounting a horse or a horse mounting a mule without any offspring between them. So what's the conclusion here? Nothing is lost, nothing is forgotten, nothing is without consequence. The rider will always become the ridden. The owner will become the owned. The killer becomes the killed. The adorned becomes the ornament. Divine justice unfolds across time, forms, and manifestations. If one wants to rid himself of karmic debt, then you have to be fair and just to everyone and everything. You have to make humanity first and treat everyone as your own self and treat them as you would like to be treated, especially also your spouse and your children. And there's much more speech, by the way. I just took a little bit to share with you, but it runs in all conditions, with parents, with children, with siblings, and the likes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.